welcome to the Wild Grace podcast. We are so excited for today's episode because we are going to get to know Natalie and Dave. This is Dave, her husband. You guys know Natalie, and I'm Kenzie, and we get to hear their story, and it is a pretty wild story. Before we jump into it, though, we're going to go ahead and start with a prayer, like always, and I'll go ahead and offer that. Dear Jesus, we are so thankful once again to be able to do something like this, to have this podcast, to be able to talk about you and hopefully just bring your good news to more people. We're so thankful to have Natalie and Dave here and for the amazing story that they have of your grace and how you saved them. And please help us to have your spirit and help this story to touch those who are listening in any way they might need. And we love you so much, Jesus, and say thank you again for your presence in our lives. We say that in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, let's just dive right in because your story is really epic.
Thank you. Thank you, Kenzie. It's pretty wild being here. Like you said, it's just crazy to think over our life and looking back and just how life was going one way and God made it go a different direction. But I'm so grateful to have Dave join us for today's episode because he was such a huge part of my story of finding Jesus. And so a little bit of background. Dave and I both grew up. LDS was, a huge part of our life, our identity, and it was a huge part of our story because it helped our paths cross, and I will forever be grateful for that. We met young. Dave was a returned missionary, and we met through mutual friends at an open mic. We were both performing and just clicked that night and hung out, and the rest is history. Fell in love. We got married in the temple and we're very devout members. It was very important to us. We served in our wards, our callings, and it was, like I said, part of our identity. And we never in a million years would we have ever thought that it wouldn't be a part of our lives, that we wouldn't be members. But Jesus led us out of that religion and we found him outside of it. And it's crazy how it got to that point. And it took immense trials and hardships to be broken down enough to even be open to God speaking to us in a different way. And I have this whole new perspective of what a broken heart and contrite spirit is. Like I always heard that growing up, but actually experiencing it, of being broken down and having my heart completely open, is how God was able to talk to me and Dave. And so, our journey really began about 8 years ago. And I'm gonna pass it over to you, because it hit both of us at the same time, but it was in 2017 that it really started.
Yes, 2017 it was just a formidable year. It was a crazy year. So, I'm not gonna go into like all the details of the beginning of it, but the long story short is I had a brother just older than me that went missing, and that started on July 27th, 2017. And for 3 weeks, we didn't know where he went.
And this was a big story in Utah. Like this was a very public, like on the news.
Yeah. Yeah, it attracted a lot of crazies.
Yeah.
But what I mean by that is I got tons of messages. It was just a very weird situation.
Because it was this mysterious thing.
Yeah.
Because your brother was so young.
Yeah. Well, and he had more charisma in one pinky than I have in my whole body. Like at his funeral, there was upwards between like 1,500 to 2,000 people.
Wow.
There's people standing in the hallways because there wasn't enough room. And that just shows his charismatic personality, his willingness to like talk to everybody. I met 100 of my brother's best friends, right? So like every person who introduced themselves, that's how they would.
Yeah, who has 100 best friends?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Married.
And so married with a
little
kid
baby.
and super successful, fit guy, like good looking dude. It was a very strange situation.
Right. Yeah.
And we still don't know what happened. So before that question even comes up. We have
Mhm.
no idea how he ended up in the Jordan River. And that's where we found his body 3 weeks later. So at the beginning of this, it was one of those things that was so strange. Like, I remember when I got the phone call from my mom, because all the rest of the siblings were down on a river trip and were
Oh.
unreachable besides my dad's like satellite phone that would get a
Yeah.
text. So I got a call at 9 o'clock saying my brother.
And you didn't go because I was pregnant with our second baby, and so that's why you went
Yeah.
on the river trip.
Yeah, and you were getting close.
Yeah.
And so I got a call at about 9 o'clock, and my mom's like, "Paul's missing." Like, what do you mean he's missing?
Yeah.
That's so weird. And so the search began. And a couple of days into the search, there was a group that reached out through our private investigator that was helping us try to find where he went. He said, "Hey, there's this Christian group out in California that find missing kids, but they said they're willing to come and help. And they have a lot of resources and they're willing to come help and they don't charge anything." And
That's so cool.
yeah, and we're like, "Dude, we'll take all the help we can get."
Yeah, of course.
And so they showed up, and this was one of those things that, like, you're already in shock and then you're trying to figure this out. And so we're trying to, like, we've got flyers, we've got people going out and searching, and I mean, we're pulling out every single stop to try to locate him. And I meet this Christian guy shows up. He's got a big old beard, he's got tattoos, and he just brought the presence of God with him. And I'll never forget, I was about to go back out searching because of where we found his car. We're like, and we think he had been separated from his car before it ended up where it was. It was in West Valley, and like this meth, like kind of like a lot of meth houses, a lot of drugs, scary place.
Sketchy place.
Yeah. Yeah, and I remember I was about to go out, and he goes, "Hey, Dave." He's like, "You doing okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine."
So, sorry,
Mhm.
pause. Just for clarity, where are you at right now?
We're up in Salt Lake.
And
So
where are you at?
we would meet at different places. So we'd meet like our two main places, hubs, you would call it. Like, one was in Sandy, and then one was my parents' house.
Okay, and we as in like everyone who's looking.
Everyone
so the
who's
search
looking, like the main
party
people who are looking.
would meet and you guys would kind of like talk about what you're going to do and
Yep.
then you guys would disperse.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah, and
that's
then
what's happening.
and so we like built out maps, and we were like, "Okay, we have this section," and we would send people to different sections to look.
Okay. Okay, so that's
And
what you're
so
doing right now.
yeah, and so I'm about to go back out, and at this point I'm at my parents' house, and I'm about to leave, and he goes, "Hey man," he's like, "Do you mind if I pray for you?" And up to this point, culturally, if someone says, "Hey, I'm gonna pray for you," that means they're gonna go home and they'll pray, and right, type of thing is what I
Right.
would.
That's the Utah LDS
Yeah.
culture is like,
Sending love.
yeah, and they'll pray for you in a private, personal way.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so I was like, "Yeah, sure." And then he's like, "Great." And he puts both his hands on my shoulders and he starts praying. And it was literally like he had Jesus on the other line. He's like, "Here, these are some things Jesus wants to tell you." And at the time, I didn't really know what to make of that experience. Like, because I was in such a dark, because you start thinking, you're like, it's been a couple of days. We haven't been able to find him. Like, you start thinking about the worst things, right?
For
And then all of a
sure.
sudden I had this one beam of light
Mhm.
that came in the middle. And it just,
In a very unexpected
yeah.
way.
Well,
Caught you
in
off
just
guard.
in like not in a
Not in formal.
religious, right, pious like type of. It
Yeah.
was this guy that, yeah, it was very unexpected.
Right, because culturally, we have to remember in a very, LDS Mormon setting,
Right.
Utah.
Yeah.
Not typical with like a long beard, lots of tattoos.
Yeah.
Right? That is not typical culturally. And then to have him just immediately like place his hands on you and start praying, that will seem more like what we call a priesthood blessing, which is a very formal, like you have to have. It's just totally different. It's
Right.
formal. It's planned. It's you sit down. I'm going to place my hands on your head. Like it has to be a certain authority. This was completely like there was none of that.
Yeah, it was unrestrained, and he was doing that for like people all the time. And I've been working with Rudy now as an operator with him and certain ministries for coming up on 5 years, and he does it everywhere all the
Yeah.
time. Like, and it's just a normal thing for them and their family, and it just made such an impact on me. And it was like the pebble that created the avalanche.
Right.
Right.
Because can I just
Mhm.
question you a little more?
Mhm.
What was it that was like, wait a second, what was that? Like, talk more about what were you thinking?
Yeah. So it's I mean, it's been 8 years now, so I don't know if I can explain the specifics of the prayer
Right,
at
right.
all. It was just this feeling of like unrestrained understanding and like everything's going to be okay. Like that's what I walked away from it. Like I was under such a heavy burden and that burden
Yeah,
got lifted for the duration of that prayer. And
that's amazing.
yeah, and it was incredible. And then, my brother passes, or we find out that he's passed away
Weeks later?
3 weeks
3
later.
weeks. Gosh,
Yeah.
that's a torturous 3
Yeah.
It
weeks.
was
So his funeral was on August 18th. So it started on July 26th. His funeral was on the 18th. And I just remember like it gets really foggy like
For
when you go
sure.
through situations like that, like the days kind of, and then plus we hadn't been sleeping. I was going through my own existential angst anyways.
Natalie's super pregnant.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
In fact, she had started having contractions until I got the phone call. Or no, until we found his body and then the contractions stopped.
So yeah, I was 9 months pregnant with my second, and I think with all the stress, we were out searching in the heat of summer, and I started like preterm labor symptoms of all these contractions. And I remember praying of being like, "Oh, we had found his body." And then I'm like, "Okay, I can't have a baby right now. Like, God, please, we need to get through this funeral." And then the contractions went away. And then we have the funeral, really just heavy, and we go to bed that night. And I wake up in labor. And I didn't know what it was like to be in labor because with my first, I was induced. And I mean, we hadn't slept in weeks. Dave hadn't slept. And I was like, oh no, like he can finally sleep tonight a little bit. And so I didn't want to wake him up, but I was full blown labor. And I like wake him up and I'm like, I think it's time. And I can't like breathe through the contractions. I'm like in transition. And so this is a crazy birth story and we can talk birth another
Yeah,
time.
we'll do a birth episode.
Yeah. If you love all the details, I love all the details. Long story short, my baby came really fast and we barely made it to the hospital, but I had a really fast natural delivery, but I had never even considered the idea of a natural birth. So it was really scary, really painful.
It's
It
intense.
was really intense, but also beautiful. All of a sudden, our baby girl healthy in our arms, and it was a whirlwind. And but it was pretty traumatic in the moment. I mean, we just emotionally gone through this search for weeks, this funeral. But this was a time that I like look back and see God's hand because it was such a dark time, but it was so symbolic of the timing because the sun set with laying Dave's brother to rest, and then the sun rose with new life. And there was even a rainbow over the valley that day. And it was like God was like, hey, I know this is hard, but I see you. And I'm there with you through the hard. And we named our little girl Olivia and we call her Liv. And I just feel like that was really symbolic for us as well. And so then we're in this transition of grief, but then also this huge life event of joy of bringing a new family member into our family. Just the transition to 2 kids was so hard. And then more trials just kept tumbling after us. Dave's job, I'll let you talk a little bit about that, but it just crumbled.
Yeah,
Oh
so
man.
I was a part owner in a solar company, and obviously while searching for my brother, like we were at a kind of a pivotal moment, and then this happens, and I was running 2 offices, and I disappear for a month.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you've ever worked with like sales reps or if you've ever done things like that, like those things escalate quickly in a good way. They also escalate quickly in a bad way.
Yeah.
And so we hadn't had a paycheck in a couple of months, and then all of a sudden everything's just tanking very quickly. And I remember there was this moment, this was in November. I can't remember the exact day, but during the search for my brother, when I talk about that existential angst, up to that point in my life, I had always identified myself as a nice guy. And I realized during the search for my brother, I'm like, oh, I would do horrible things. Like there aren't very many lines I wouldn't cross to bring him home. And Carl Jung talks about it like the shadow self, or
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I got introduced to that guy. And
Because a lot of people will wear like a mask about that and never face it or realize so like what's in them.
Yeah, right. And so I'll never forget that. I realized that everything I had done up to that point, like I wanted to look strong. I wasn't that interested in being strong. I wanted to look nice. I wasn't interested in being like kind. Like
Because
everything
you'd
was kind of
never
perf- well, and it's not that it wasn't sincere. It's just
right.
there was performative aspects to it.
For sure. And like before this, when did you have a chance to really meet this side of yourself?
Right. Yeah.
Like you kind of have to be forced into that.
Yeah.
How else would you have met that
Right.
without something like this happening?
Right. Well, and so I felt these I couldn't wear the masks anymore.
Yeah.
And it kind of culminated in this one night when our baby woke up and our toddler woke up and they were screaming. And I still haven't slept. I'm stressed out of my
Mm,
mind.
yeah.
And I realized I was getting angry at my toddler. Like I was starting to feel like extreme rage. And I
Yeah.
was like, I have to leave. I have to go walk.
Yeah.
So, poor Natalie, she doesn't know what the heck's going on or what I'm going like because we didn't communicate nearly as well as we do today. But
Yeah.
I walk out and Natalie's like, "Where are you going?" I'm like, "I have to leave," and I just walk out the front door.
This is in the middle of the night?
This is
I'm
at
like,
3 in the morning.
okay.
Yeah. So at 3 in the morning, I start walking down Main Street in Pleasant Grove, and
Mm.
I am cussing God out. I think honestly, this was my first real prayer to God. But I was like, I did everything you told me to do. I've checked all these things that you said that were required. And I am like, yeah, I'm just losing it and like shaking my fist at God.
Yeah.
And this was the first time I ever heard the voice of God, the audible voice of God. And he said, David, you have to start connecting or you're going to die. And that
Wow.
one phrase split my life in half, where I was like, all of these areas where I thought it was connection was actually a mask and it was disconnection. All of these things that I was trying to do, these titles and these having the look of success, it all like opened up to me. And I I'm like, I can't lie anymore. I can't put on this when I would try to put on the mask, it felt like I was dying. So I was just like, I can't wear this anymore.
Can I ask you, so many ups and downs for this. I mean, a lot of downs because your brother goes missing and then you find him and he's gone. So huge low. And then you have the birth. So literally death and like literally overnight a birth, which a baby, of course you're going to find joy in that. And then just let's speak in terms of like a timeline of grief. This is extremely new and fresh. It's not like, oh, the funeral's over, we're going back to life. As someone who has experienced grief, right? Like this is so fresh. And so would you say that like Dave, your anger is like you lose your brother, like okay, we have a beautiful birth with a rainbow, very symbolic. You can see could you see God in it like right then at the birth? Did you feel God?
I feel like looking back.
Okay, but not in the moment.
No, in the
maybe.
moment it's just like crazy.
Just
We're
a
trying to wrap
whirlwind.
our head around what was happening.
Yeah. Okay. And then would you say your anger at this point is just growing?
Yeah. Well, and up to that point, I didn't have. So I had gone through I had always been like very athletic, and that's when I would get my anger out.
Yeah.
But then I had had injuries. I was constantly sick. So I was sick for about 7 years. I would wake up every single day feeling like I was going to puke, like I just was constantly sick. And so I had no way to get it out. Like I had no outlet.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking at the time, I'll never forget this. I remember being like, I don't have any real friends. Like I don't have someone to call. I don't have somebody to talk to. And yeah, I'll never forget that. It was just extremely lonely. And then I'd travel, so I'd be gone for a week at a
Yeah.
time, right? And then come back, and then I'd be gone for another 10 days. It was just one of those where that pressure cooker was just, it had no way to get the pressure out.
Yeah.
And the pressure just kept building. Like it's so crazy looking back. It's like, whoa, so much happened because during this, also God's like, let's unveil more. It was also during this time that I faced my childhood trauma. I was sexually abused as a child and it all came up then. And I remember in the moment, it was so hard. I'm like, why all right now? Because it felt so heavy.
Yeah.
And
This is not the time.
No.
God, This
I'm
is
like,
not the
we're
time.
already suffering. Why does this have to come up right now? And that's its whole story, but like
Yeah.
whole nother story, I mean. And it was just heavy as an adult finally facing that of something that I just buried my whole life. And so that was really hard facing. And and then our little baby, she got pneumonia and was hospitalized. And yeah, it was just like one thing after the next that completely broke us down. Where I feel like both of us were just like, we can't pretend anymore. Like we are struggling. What do we believe? Like it just completely crumbled.
Yeah, when you feel that broken, those questions get really real really fast.
Yeah, like, "God, where are you?"
And I just want to share one quick story. So after she had opened up about this, we were kind of going through it. We were trying to figure it out. And I remember I was sitting out in the foyer on a Sunday and I was like praying, I'm like, God, please, like, send me someone to help.
A foyer in the
In the LDS
LDS
church, it's
church.
like the front room. If
Mhm.
you're a Christian, it's outside the sanctuary. Like it would just be like this. In LDS culture, we call it the sacrament room. But I was sitting out there with our baby, and I was like, just please send me somebody. And one of the bishoprics sees me, and he walks over. I'm like, oh, thank God, like this, I'm gonna get some help.
Yeah.
And he walks up and he goes, hey, he's like, how you doing? I'm like, not very good. And he goes, okay, we noticed you haven't been paying your tithing. And I go, yeah, you have to
Ah.
make money in order to pay tithing. And he goes, okay, and he kind of bumbled off.
And really quickly, tithing
Yeah.
is, I mean, I guess people know what tithing is, but it's definitely more expected. The LDS church, it's not necessarily like a donation that you decide. It's like that it's always 10% of your income. The leaders, like the bishop, know if you are paying it or not. It's not necessarily a private personal matter. Do you think that's
Yeah.
I'm explaining that
Yeah.
okay?
And paying your tithing gives you access to certain things, right? You can't go to the temple. You can't be what's considered a worthy member without paying a full tithe.
Right. So it's not just a small thing. Like it is actually a big deal. So the fact that, you're suffering here and you even say like, yeah, I'm not doing good. And that's the first thing out of his mouth is like really unfortunate. And I'm sure just really didn't help. I'm sure that was not.
Well, and I think that was one of those moments though where, because I was going through this thing where I was like, I just was realizing that what I had believed and the presuppositions I had had may be incorrect. And so it was just like that was one of those nails among many others in the coffin
Right.
of our activity in the church. So like we had
Mhm.
started going less and less.
Everything was really confusing, and, we're like, "We don't know what we believe." And then I was asked I can't even remember what the calling was in Yeah, they called me in and gave me a calling, and all growing up, I had been taught, like, if you get a calling in church, God will never give you more than you can handle, and you were pre-called to this calling, and you're supposed to accept it. And it was just I had a new baby, a toddler, we'd just gone through all this. I was like, "I can't." And I said no to the calling.
Which again, culturally is kind of a big deal because there's like, no, you don't say no to callings because, like she was saying, a calling is the leaders coming to a member of a congregation and saying, like, hey, we want you to be in this job. Like, we want you to, I mean, it is a job, it's not paid or anything like that, but it's like, we want you to be a teacher in the youth or in the primary, and then you would normally be like, yes, I accept, because we are told these callings are not just random, like this comes from God. And so if you say no, that like, are you saying no to God, or like you're turning down service, right?
Right.
So
And that they had revelation that you're supposed to have this calling. And yeah, I said no. And that like shocked Dave. He's like, "You can say no." Anyway, yeah, we just like, what do we believe? And um I am so grateful for Dave because I remember being confused and I'm like, I don't know if I believe in God, but I feel like I felt him in my life. And I remember communicating that with him, and he did a deep dive, and it started with you of just tuning everything else out and focusing on Jesus.
Yeah, so that's kind of where I went next is I was I started reading the four gospels on repeat. And at this time too, I was just I was like a drowning man grabbing on to like the side of a boat type of thing. Like
Yeah.
I was so hungry to know truth, and at this point I don't care what the truth is. Even if it's horrible, I would rather know it than live in any sort of illusion.
Yeah.
And so I was reading the four gospels. I studied Greek mythology. I studied, like, my ancestors were all Vikings, so I studied all of that, like all the Norse legend.
Mhm.
I went and I started reading all of the Western, what's considered like the Western canon. So I started reading Dostoevsky. I started reading Solzhenitsyn. I started reading even just some of like the classic books, 1984 and Brave New World and
Mhm.
Animal Farm. Like,
Yeah.
I don't care what the truth is, I just want it. And so, and I even studied, I read the Bhagavad Gita, I read the Quran.
Wow.
I was,
All these religious texts and historical.
and historical, because
Yeah.
I
Like
just,
political even.
yeah,
Yeah.
I just wanted to understand. I'm like, I don't care how bad it is, I just want to understand.
And where are you at in this point? First of all, what is this timeline? Is this like a year later, 2017,
This is
2018?
2018.
Okay, so a
Yeah.
year, and where are you at right now as far as God goes? Because you had him speak to you.
Yeah. But I was at a point, I'm like, if there is, because I read Richard Dawkins' books as well. And I read Sam Harris. So
Okay,
I read a bunch of the atheists.
okay, those are
Yeah,
atheist
these are
books.
and so I was like, if there is no God, I want to know.
Okay, so you're
Like,
still, even though you had this
yeah,
audible, like very
yeah,
big experience, you're still like, I don't know.
right.
Okay.
Well, it was more like, because, Jesus gives the example of the man who built his house upon the sand.
Mm-hmm.
My house was going out to sea,
Yeah.
and God had been a part of that, like that whole structure,
But on sand.
but on
Got
sand.
it.
And so I was basically like, I was watching that house crumble one piece at a time and then trying to like rebuild. And so I was like, I want to rebuild on the truth. And that's where I was like, I'm just going to read Jesus's words. I'm going to read everything, because I don't know who God is. I heard a voice, but maybe that was just my cycle. I start
Okay,
psychoanalyzing,
that
right?
makes
I start
sense. Yeah.
going through all this stuff. And so, and at this time, I'm reading the four gospels. I'm just like constant. And I would get through like one gospel about every week. So I was finishing the four gospels about once a month. And I was
Wow.
just
Yeah.
going through it, and I would like highlight things. I'm like, what the heck does this mean? And I'm like, if Jesus is truth, then like I want to know it as well. But if it's Hinduism, I want to know it. If it's
Yeah.
Buddhism, if it's atheism, and I have to develop my own ethic, then that's fine too.
Mm.
And so it was just this point of like, I just didn't care anymore what the
Yeah.
truth was. I just wanted to know it.
Yeah.
And so he's going through all this, and I wish, I like, looking back, I'm like, man, I should have done that. But my searching was confusion, and I was like just wanting to grasp something. And if you know EFY, like that youth,
Especially for you.
yeah, I had gone to that, and
It's
when
like
I
a
was
camp.
teenager, and they have like music, and I love music. It's a part of my upbringing. And there was a LDS artist that I loved her music, but I had seen that she had left the LDS church when I was a member. And I'm so embarrassed, but back then in that mindset, I like unfollowed her because I was like, she left, she's deceived or whatever. And
Yeah, but
I,
don't be embarrassed, because that's actually a huge part of this whole thing, right?
yeah,
Is like when people leave as members, we're like, oh, we can't talk to them.
all of a sudden their story isn't valid,
Right. We're
and
like,
you're like,
oh.
I can't listen to that.
Yeah. So that's interesting that
Yeah,
you unfollowed
culturally,
her.
yeah. For whatever reason, I was online and I came across a video of her, and she was on a podcast, and it was called the Mormon Stories podcast. And I had no idea what that podcast was. And I was like, oh, Mormon, maybe she came back.
Oh,
Like
interesting. Yeah.
she came back. I want to hear her story.
Yeah.
I'm like, that will really help me, because I know she struggled. I'm struggling. Like, I want to hear her faith. Like, I want to lean on her testimony.
Can I just point out too that the fact that you wanted to listen because you thought she came back just shows how you were not searching for ways out of the church. You were not like, I want to leave the Mormon church. You had unfollowed her because she left. And now you're like, oh, maybe she came back. This could help me. Like, you are trying to find ways to stay and have it make sense and
100%.
work for your life.
Right. Well, you're taught that like this is Jesus's church, the one and only true church. Like, it has to be true, you know? And so you're trying to make it make sense. And so anyway, I listened to this podcast, and it's the first time that I was even open to listening. And that's like the first exposure I got to church history, found out who Fanny Alger was for the very first time. And my jaw was like on the floor. I was like, what? Like, it felt like a trust crisis that I had been lied to.
Because her story wasn't a story of coming back. It was why she left.
Yes.
And why she's still not Mormon.
Yes. And so that took me by surprise. But, and then that led me to go down this whole rabbit hole of finding out church history. And I immediately went to Dave after, and I was like, did you know this? And we both went down that rabbit hole. And I'm grateful we were able to explore that together. And I feel like it's part of the mourning process too, because we got really angry at the church hurt. And that caused more confusion for me of like, is God real? I can't believe in that God anymore. And then that's like when that question that I brought up to Dave, I'm like, I can't believe in this anymore, but I feel like I felt God in my life. So it's so confusing, because why would I feel pulled away from that if that's his true church, you know? And so it's just a confusing time. And so then I'm so grateful that Dave dove into Jesus's words, because then it sparked so many conversations between us, where he would share it with me, even though looking back, like, I wish I would have dove into the word, but we just talked about the stories, and it helped change, like, rewire my brain of who Jesus is and his teachings from how I was taught.
And how amazing that you guys are doing this together. And I moved the water bottles. You're not holding hands right this second, but I moved them because you guys have been holding hands and you guys are just so sweet. I love your relationships so much. But I'm sure it had something to do too with, like, you were a busy mom. You had very little kids. So reading like that might have been really overwhelming. But the fact that he was doing it and relaying it to you. And I also just kind of wanted to explain too that church history, like this reference to this church history rabbit hole is a thing, because there is so much church history as far as the way the LDS church was founded with Joseph Smith in the 1800s. Growing up in the church, you just don't learn about it. It's very selective.
And it's portrayed a certain way.
It's portrayed a very certain way. Things are left out. And up until the internet boomed, people didn't know because people didn't know. And then once the internet kind of had more accessibility, people started finding out stuff that they'd never heard before. And you do feel betrayed, right? Because you're like, wait, I was never told this. Why? And you feel lied to. And that's where this mourning process comes in, where you're like, what have I believed? And then it throws everything into question, which is so confusing, because you're like, I have felt God, but this can't be God, right?
Right. It's that whole analogy also of Jesus talking about the house upon the rock. It's like, what does it build upon? And you realize that the church, when it crumbles, when that was supposed to be your foundation, and it wasn't. And it's like, my foundation was in this organization, not Jesus.
Right. Yeah.
And experiencing what that feels like was very confusing.
Yeah. So Dave, what were you finding in Jesus's words?
Yeah. So it was actually a combination of Jesus's words and then 1984
by George Orwell.
Yes, that's incredible. I suggest it for anybody, but I started to recognize doublespeak for the first time, where I was like, I was taught grace meant this. That's not what Jesus is saying. I was taught that salvation meant this. That's not what Jesus was saying. I was taught that I am saved after all I can do. That is not what Jesus is saying.
Same words, different meaning.
And that's where things get so confusing. And so as I was reading it, it was kind of interesting. I had two simultaneous experiences during that. Of course, it's the confusion, it's everything else. But the more I read Jesus's words, first, I'm like, I'm not lying. I don't know if I can tell the truth, but I know I can stop lying. And it's not even that I was like lying about big things.
Yeah.
It's those little putting on the mask, like knowing how to like market something, right? And I'm like, I'm not doing that anymore.
This is your radical truth.
Yes.
Is that where you guys started practicing?
Yes.
Radical truth.
Yeah, just radical honesty.
Honesty.
Like,
that's what I meant.
Yeah,
sorry.
just like fully just not lying anymore.
Yeah.
That's where it started. And then the second thing was I became disgusted with fear. Anytime someone was using fear, and now I feel like I could put words to it, but at the time it was just like I would feel this disgusting, inky, gross, like
Yeah.
blackness coming onto me. And I'll never forget, this was the last priesthood session I went to. So they have general conference, right? Every 6 months. They would have these priesthood sessions. Me and all my brothers and my dad would go.
Meaning the leaders of the church would be speaking to the men of the church.
Yes. And
like worldwide.
Yeah. And I remember President Nielsen giving a talk, and the whole time I was getting more and more disgusted. And at the same time, I'm like, I'm not gonna lie. Right. So it's like I'm just experiencing, like, it was just so filled with control and with fear, and I just kept getting more and more grossed out. And so we walk out, and my dad can tell I'm distraught. Like
You're upset.
I'm like this. I'm feeling weird, right?
Mhm.
And he goes like, "Hey, what'd you think of priesthood?" I'm like, "I hated that. I hated it. That was so filled with fear. Like, I feel really gross right now."
Oh, and I'm sure your dad was like,
They're like, that's not my experience.
Right? Yeah.
yeah, because both of your parents are very, rooted in the church. So.
Yes. Yeah. And that was like the first time that I was just like, I'm not gonna lie anymore.
Yeah.
I'm just not doing that
Yeah.
anymore. And that was
Which is a hard practice, because even within your own mind, like, to admit to yourself that, like, I don't like what the prophet of my church is saying is a big deal, because as LDS members, we are told and taught not to ever doubt or criticize our priesthood leaders, especially the prophet. So for you to even allow yourself to think, yeah, I hated his talk, is like actually a really big deal. Was that kind of like a weird feeling for you? Did you feel guilty? Or were you just at that point, you're like,
I was at the point where I was like, if I'm going to bet my life on something,
yeah,
I want to bet it on the truth. And what I was finding, this is where like I was really starting to find the ultimate source of truth is Jesus, his words, his teachings. And this is before I had prayed to Jesus for the first time, but it was like I was just engrossed in what he had to say. And what I was finding is there was all these other books that I had read had many like principles that were helpful for life. But when Jesus talks about drinking from the living water, when I would go read his words, it felt like I was parching my thirst that I had had.
It was different.
It was just different.
You were
it was
quenching
like,
that.
well, and I started feeling this like experience of he's changing me, but never in the way that I'd ever experienced before. And so
it was positive.
Yeah, it was honest and it was positive. So it was like hey,
real, like this is real.
Yeah, and it was more of a conversation like in my prayers of like, and this is while we're still technically members, right?
Right, yeah.
And so, but I was having this experience of like, hey Dave, you ready to let that go? And I'm like, I don't know, man. And it was just it was just very honest, but then it was more about me surrendering and letting go, and less about me willpowering my way through change.
Oh, I love that. I can like feel the softening of your heart. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I just want to say, like, with the thirst, he was quenching your thirst.
Yeah. You were parched, and it was quenching.
Yeah. Yeah, but another like huge milestone in our story was Dave and I took our two kids, we had two at the time, on a road trip along the Pacific Coast Trail. And we'd stop at all these campsites, and we met...
Not the Pacific Coast, just the Pacific Coast Road.
Oh, the road.
We weren't hiking.
Right, now. We were in an RV. And anyway, we were at these campsites, and we met this Christian guy, and really talkative. And Dave's really talkative and social, makes friends really easy. And he met this guy, and this was another like exposure to Christianity outside of what we had known. And I feel like this was a really big part.
Yeah.
So I meet this guy. And so we had this I bought the RV for $3,500, and it was like, and that was a big deal for us at the time. It was like, we paid cash for this. We felt very excited, but it would break down at every campsite. Like every campsite, I was on YouTube trying to fix.
God bless you guys.
Right? And yeah, I didn't spend very much. The kids and Natalie, they would go, and I would just be like under the car trying to figure out what the heck's wrong. And this guy comes up and he starts helping me. and we're like chatting back and forth, and I start like kind of unloading my anger toward religion.
Yeah.
And we're going back and forth and back and forth. And he hit me with a question that I'd never been asked. He said, "Man, Dave, it sounds like you're trying to be accepted by God." Yeah, dude. Like, I did
Yes.
all the things. I did everything that has been asked of me. I've shown up. I've sacrificed. Like, that would be nice. And he goes,
I just have
yeah.
one thought on that. It's that mindset that's like, you're going to be blessed if you do these things. And so that's why it was confusing, why life was so hard. We were doing all the right things. Why was it crumbling?
Were you still considering yourself members at this point?
Yeah, we were still members, but with a lot of questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
makes
And we
sense.
weren't at this point. I mean, we went on a 6-week trip
Mm.
and didn't think about going to church.
Yeah, you
So
were just
we're
like,
like,
we need a break.
Yeah, we just need a
little
little
sabbatical
space.
here.
Right. He goes, and so he asked me that, and that's my response. And then he goes, "You ever knelt down and told Jesus that you accept him?" That question, because I had read Mormon Doctrine by Bruce R. McConkie, where he said that there's some members of the church that think they have this special relationship with Jesus and they pray to him. You're not supposed to pray to Jesus. And so, like, and I had read all of these things from the apostles because I've always been big on research. And I remember when he asked me that question, I think the best way I could describe it is, when you're getting out of a hot car and it's freezing outside and that wind hits,
Yeah.
where it's like refreshing, but it's also kind of scary.
Also takes your breath away.
Yeah, or like jumping into a frozen lake
Oh,
or
yeah.
like something like that, where it's like I feel like I'm crossing a Rubicon if I do that.
Mm.
And he's like, "Let's pray right now." I'm like, "No, dude, whoa, take it easy. I'm not
Don't
doing
you
that."
love that? Love that. And learning that like these enthusiastic Christians,
Yeah.
and it's like, I want to be that.
Yeah.
Let's pray right now. I
Yeah.
love it.
And it took me 2 months. So we had 3 weeks left in the trip, and then we had been home for about a week. And I felt like in Revelations, Jesus says, "I stand at the door and knock." It felt like that. And so I don't remember if it was the morning or the evening or how long it took. I just locked our bedroom door and I knelt down and I just said, "Jesus, I have no idea if you're real. I have no clue. I don't know what's real. But if these are your words and if this is you, make it obvious, because I don't want to keep doing this thing where I'm constantly confused."
Right.
And he responded and he goes, "Dave, this is what I've been waiting for the whole time." And I felt a true, like, born again experience. And so I come out of the bedroom, I run up to Natalie, and I'm like, "Dude, okay, you have to pray to Jesus and tell him that you accept him. I don't care if it takes 10 years or if it takes 10 months or it takes the rest of our lives. Like, you have to do it. It's incredible."
So was this something that you kind of mulled over? This guy says, "Hey, have you ever tried praying to Jesus?" And you're like, "Wait, what? No." Because in the LDS religion, you don't pray to Jesus, you pray to God the Father. We don't say like, Jesus, right? We end it in his name, the prayer, but we don't pray to Jesus when you're a member of the church. So big deal. This was the first time you've ever done that. And like, so were you like thinking about it then? Sorry.
No,
Sorry,
you're
Natalie.
good.
Like it took you a week
it
of
was,
like,
it was 2
oh.
months. Yeah, it took 2 months of me, like, because I could tell that if I cross this line, there's no going back.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when Natalie and
So
I first met,
interesting.
and then like I knew like 4 weeks in that I'm like, I'm gonna marry this girl. It was like once I cross that line, once I make a commitment, I have a heart. I don't back off my
Right.
commitments.
Okay.
So
that totally makes
it was like a
sense.
big moment. And when I told him that I accepted him, just the flood of like relief and peace and this is the right way to go, like everything became clear really quick.
Yeah, so I mean, Dave's journey was really inspiring, and we just talked about Jesus nonstop. And I got to know Jesus's words through him because he had this amazing experience by praying and dove into the Word, and that was my exposure to focusing on just Jesus. And then we moved to Oregon, continued on this journey.
Would you mind telling your story about, because you prayed to Jesus?
Yes, I did, but
Yeah.
I feel like that came in time.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't as soon. I feel like my rewiring in my brain was finding out and learning Jesus through your experience. And so it took time. But I had my own, like, born again experience, I would say, not like a moment, but like a cumulative.
Which is cool to know how
Yeah.
you guys were like, these are different timelines for you
Yeah.
and different ways where it's like yours was kind of in this moment and then yours was over
Mhm.
time.
Yeah, and I think what was so, like, beneficial and I'm just so grateful for is during this confusing time, we were just an open conversation out of curiosity, like, "Did you know this? What did you think about this?" Like, neither of us ever were like, "This is what I believe, and I don't believe in this anymore," to, like, take us off guard, like, we were able to unravel a lot of our beliefs together, which I'm so grateful for. But anyway, so we moved to Oregon, and this ministry that Dave and I had met during the search of when his brother went missing, we had met them a few years earlier and had been in contact, but then Dave just felt God on his heart again, like, you need to partner with this ministry and help them. And I feel like this was another huge milestone in our journey.
Yeah, so we're out in Oregon and COVID hits, so we're kind of isolated anyways because we have no friends or family out there.
And Oregon's not the best place to be during COVID.
No, it was super cool for the first 3 weeks, and then after that, it got a little crazy. Yeah, but so I start, like, getting this feeling, and so I start calling Pastor Rudy. Now, Pastor Rudy had been on, like, I think he was on back-to-back ops, and I'm just my family, although they made such a huge impact and they've always been kind, like, we're one of hundreds of thousands of ops that they've done. So it's like
Mhm.
so I just start calling him, and
And this is because this is the pastor
who had originally
prayed over Dave, and he is like kind of the leader of
Yeah.
this ministry who searches and finds missing children,
Yes. Yeah.
Missing and exploited.
And
exploited children.
so I just start calling him, and I wasn't able to get him on the phone right away, but I just it was like every time I woke up in the morning, it's like call Rudy, and every time I went to bed, it was like call Rudy again. And so I get him on the phone. I'm like, dude, I had this born again experience. I've like accepted Jesus as my Lord and Savior, and he's telling me that I have to come help. And he's like, okay, like that's awesome.
Except the only people that really are part of their team are like ex-cops, they have military
Yeah.
background.
Yeah.
So that's why it was also confusing because you're like, I don't have that.
Yeah. I'm like, but I'm willing to go get it.
Yeah. Teach me.
And so I like him. I just, Rudy and I start talking more often. And he, at the end of every phone call, he's like, can I pray for you? I'm like, please. Yes. And then I finally go out. It took a couple of months to like line it up, but then
Mhm.
I go out on my first op with them. And
Surrounded by these Christians, these like gnarly faith-filled people.
These Christian badasses.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, and they were different than anyone else I'd ever met. Where I call them like, I always joke, I'm like, they're Acts level Christians. Like, if you've ever read the book of Acts, I'm like, dude, I think we're gonna see this. And so
like
then I start
bold
Yeah.
miracles.
Yeah.
Let's pray. Like, yeah.
And so then I go out for my first op, and it was an intense experience. I had never been in those types of areas or in those types of situations before, but I found that I did just fine. And it was like I remember when I came back, because I'm like, dude, what if I'm messed up after? Like, what if I'm like
Well, 'cause
stepping into
these are-
something that will
These
because
are
we're
dark places, finding children in dark situation. In my opinion, there is nothing more evil.
yeah, and I just remember I went out and then I come back and I'm like, that was the most incredible experience I've ever had. We saw a lot of like hard things,
Mhm.
but we also were constantly praying for each other. I had these guys that were like jacked and like bearded and tough guys, but
Yeah.
then they would pray for you, and it was the most sincere, honest, like raw prayer. And we're still kind of unraveling,
Mm.
right? We're still figuring out like, oh, I was taught this isn't correct. This
Yeah.
like we were starting to work our way through it. And
It's such a long process.
yeah, it takes a long time. And then we come back from Oregon because COVID was insane there.
So we moved back to Utah.
Yeah, we moved back to Utah, and we get back to Utah, and then CERT's doing a fundraiser in Salt Lake.
Sir is the name of the ministry.
Yeah, CERT Ministry. So Rudy and his wife Lori and a bunch of the operators are all there. So I'm like, let's go. So we get back and like we haven't even moved in all the way.
Mm.
That and like I think we got there on the Thursday and Friday night we were at this fundraiser. And Pastor Rudy's wife, Lori, she's like, hey, do you guys want to get baptized? I'm like, can we? She's like, yeah. I'm like, I would love that. That'd be awesome.
And you're saying pastor, was he affiliated with a certain Christian church, or is this non-denominational?
Yeah, they're more non-denominational,
Okay.
like evangelical. They
Okay.
kind of blend those two. So, but they invited me to get baptized, and I was like, I would love that. And then I'm like, but I want to have Natalie come with me.
Was you're in Utah? Is the baptism in California?
Yeah.
Okay.
So they were doing baptisms out there. So we traveled out to California, and it was also during 2020. And the beaches are closed. We went out to the ocean.
That's right.
And we had this group, and oh my gosh, our baptism, I can't even like put it into adequate words of being an adult and choosing Jesus, like choosing to be baptized, not to join a church. There's no records. There's no formalities like that. It's just this symbol between you and God. And it was the most incredible experience going out into the ocean. And it's like there was Pastor Rudy there, but there was also Dave was there, part of my baptism, his daughters. So there's women a part of the baptism as well. And just a group of us, and me and Dave both got baptized. And I love what Pastor Rudy said to us, and I want you to share that.
Yeah. So at this time on our drive out to California, we're just chatting and we start talking about, we gotten introduced to the song The Blessing by Carrie Joe, which talks about like that you can bring blessings upon generation after generation. And so that conversation also brought up the opposite of like generational curses, like negative mindsets or like whatever it is that's been passed down.
Yeah.
Negative ways of living life, negative modes, right? All that type of stuff. But we didn't tell anyone else that we'd been like literally our whole drive. That's all we were talking about. And we get out there and me and Pastor out in the ocean down in San Diego. We're out at the beach and me and Pastor Rudy are walking into the ocean and he goes, hey Dave, he just like stops me. He goes, I wanted to tell you that baptism shatters generational curses.
And this was something you had been talking about in the car.
Yeah.
That he had no idea about, of course.
And yeah, and so we go out there and it was an interesting experience because when he said that, like I felt the chains dragging behind me of these curses that had followed and that part of them I inherited, right?
Yeah.
And
like generational trauma is real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when I was baptized, I felt those shatter. Like I felt that break away and leave. And then I got to watch my wife come out.
And it was also symbolic. Like, it wasn't a calm part of the ocean. There was a bunch of waves. And so it looks like the chains breaking, like it was just symbolic. It was so cool. And then after we were baptized to go out on the beach, and I don't even know how many of us were there, like 30 Christians just came and prayed over Dave and I.
In a circle, right?
In a circle. Everyone, women, children, men. Like it was so amazing. And it's COVID. You're not supposed to be in groups.
That's right.
And there was even a cop that came down on the beach and he's like, we gotta break this up. Who's the leader of this group?
You're like, Jesus.
That's what he said. He said Jesus.
Oh,
but
no way. Rudy said that? Oh, I was just joking. I didn't know that.
That's what he said. And the cop's like, I'm not going to arrest him.
Oh, I love that. Oh my gosh.
So yeah, that was incredible. And it's so interesting to see the changes and the chains that have broke since our baptism, like healing in ways that seem so subtle, but then you look back and you're like, whoa, that was Jesus. Like he broke those chains, like generational trauma or childhood trauma or just change of heart, just seeing how Jesus does that change. And so anyway, fast forward, we're back in Utah and we started going to a non-denominational church in Lehi and just meeting Christians and wanting community because that's something we realized was very lonely.
Yeah.
That we didn't have. Like, I'm so glad that we were on that journey together, but also it was very isolating, like all of our family and friends and neighbors. Like it was a lonely spot to be in. And we had also never been to any churches outside of an LDS church from growing up. So at first, a non denominational church felt like a culture shock
Yeah.
of experiencing that. But the people were so amazing. So we kept going back, but I still had not read Jesus's words. It was just my own heart change of conversations with Dave. But I feel like God was meeting me where I was at and showing me his hand in different situations in my life. Then the birth of my next two babies, I went on a whole healing journey because my second birth was very traumatic, a natural delivery, but just still traumatic. And with my third baby, I went on a whole journey of learning about pregnancy for the first time and trusting God's perfect design in birth. And I remember I came across a birth video of somebody doing a home birth, home water birth with their kids around, and was so focused on Jesus. And that was the first exposure. I was like, whoa, birth can be like that,
Yeah.
like praising God through this most intense situation, and it was a positive experience. I'm like, I want that. How does she get that? How do I have a
Yeah.
faith like that? I've never had like that kind of faith, and I want it. And so I'm so grateful for that experience. That's another conversation we can have
Mhm.
about birth, but God really showed me his hand in that experience, and that birth was so empowering and healing. And I would call it a pain-free birth, as in there was no fear. And I was able to ride all the contractions, and that was like a testament to me of God's hand and showing like he was right there. And, then after that birth, I had a miscarriage
Mhm.
about a year and a half later, and that was really another moment in life that kind of rattles you. Then it
Say where we were at.
Oh, that we were out in California?
Yeah, at a
Yeah.
fundraiser.
Yep. So, yeah, that was hard. We were also traveling when I had a miscarriage, so that was hard. We were out with Sir, and anyway, then it was hard because it's like I felt like it was time for our next baby, and so I felt like I was stepping into faith of having like it was sooner than I wanted anyway,
Yeah.
and I'm like, "Hey, I feel like we should have a baby," and I'm like, why would I feel that just to have a miscarriage,
Mhm.
And so that really rattled me, but, then it took a while, and then God blessed us with our rainbow baby, our little Ray, and the day I found out I was pregnant with her, there was the biggest rainbow right in front of our house, and that was another, like, God was like, "I see you. I've been with you the whole time. Like, I'm right there with you." And I just, like, hold on to those moments when I have felt God through the pain, through our whole journey. When I felt alone, I'm like, "Oh,
Yeah.
he never did leave." And then her birth, was miraculous as well. I just took everything I'd learned from, my 3rd birth to that one, and I did a home birth, and again, it was, like, one of the most spiritual experiences I've ever had. Just grew my relationship with Jesus of, like, he was showing me evidence of his hand in my life that, like, grew my faith. I'm like, "Oh, this is how my faith gets stronger, is how I get to know him." And I feel like it was during this time when I met you because I started sharing my motherhood journey online, pregnancy, birth, and just this change of heart that I had of slowing down in motherhood to soak in those like precious moments. And we connected online, and then I don't know, I was like talking about Jesus or something. We'll get
Mhm.
into your story,
Yeah.
but you had asked, like, I want to hear your story. And I had told her, like, we had focused on Jesus, told you, Kenzie,
Yeah.
and you were just like, I want to do that. I want to do a Bible study. Will you do it with me? And
Of
I was,
just the 4 gospels.
yeah. And like, let's focus on just Jesus. And I was like, okay. And I realized I had never done it for myself and had never like done a Bible study with anyone. And so then that was this year, at the beginning of the year, we just decided to read just Jesus's words. And I had a whole nother born again experience. And I guess for myself to experience as Jesus's words personally changed my heart even more. And I can't even put into words, like, if you haven't dove in yourself to the word, like, do it. Don't rely on anybody else. Like, yes, that can change you as it did me, but getting that personal relationship with Jesus in the word, when you realize that the word is Jesus and you get to know his words, you're getting to know him. And what truth is Jesus. And so you're getting to know truth by diving into the word. And it completely changed me this year even more. And I've experienced so many miracles with my healing, with relationships, my trauma, and things that I've struggled with my whole adult life that I have no other explanation than Jesus.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, these miracles that are in these pages in my own way, like I'm experiencing it. And I'm finding my voice in Jesus. And it's like these miracles when people were mute and couldn't speak. He's doing that for me.
Yeah.
Like I was mute of not being able to share my experiences or heal. Like I felt like a literal block on my voice. And this year I started serving in the worship band at this non-denominational church that we go to. And like I hadn't done music for a decade because it
Yeah.
was a block. How healing it is to find my voice in Jesus through that. And then also this podcast, like speaking scares me so bad. I'm so glad that
And
you
here we are.
planted that seed. And so it's so crazy to look back and see the connecting dots and how God works of you think life's going one direction and then he takes a baseball bat and hits you another direction. And I've never had a relationship with Jesus like I do now. And I'm so grateful. Like, even though it was so hard and is still hard, I am forever grateful. He's completely changed my life.
Yeah. No, this story, I just love this story so much. You have, I mean, really hard tragedy that most people probably won't experience in their life, right? And it's also a mindset shift of like, God didn't do this to me. This just happened.
God takes what the enemy meant for evil and he turns it for good.
Yep. And to see what he did with that.
Yep. And it's not like, well, you can handle this. The fact is we can't. And it's that surrender and
Exactly.
handing it and laying at the foot of the cross and being like, Jesus, I need you.
That complete reliance on him. Thank you guys so much. And I just want to say, like, we get a lot of questions like, I want to know Jesus like you guys, or where do I start? And I feel like your story is so perfect of, first of all, forget everything you know. I think you have to have that willingness to humble yourself that like, okay, whatever I think and I know I might be wrong. And then pray to Jesus. Like literally go to the source and then read his words. Like if those, I feel like those are the three things that I would tell someone, and your story perfectly like followed those. If that's what you want to, like if you want to pursue Jesus, you cannot go wrong. If you do those three things, read his words, the 4 gospels. But
I love that. That's a great summary.
yes.
Yeah, and I think when you read his words and you try, you approach it with that humility, you get introduced. Because a lot of the times, I know for me as a guy, and I know a lot of other guys experience this, like the typical Christian is like the Ned Flanders from Simpsons, like the nerdy kind of, you know what I mean? Soft hands. But the Jesus that you meet in the 4 Gospels is rugged and wild and willing to stand up for what's right, willing to flip tables and call out those who are doing evil. Like, it is the most masculine step that you can take. And when you surrender to him, he actually will take that and he will reveal the gifts that he placed inside of you and how to use them.
I love that.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much, Dave and Natalie, for sharing that, because that is a hard story to share. You know, so many ups and downs and just tragedy, but knowing that your brother is literally running around with Jesus right now, he's probably here listening right now for this podcast. Honestly, thank you again. I really did feel Jesus here, and their story is a part of my story. Like that's where we intercept. So thank you guys. And thank you all for listening. Yeah, thanks for being here. And just remember that Jesus is near, grace is real, and you are wildly loved.
Yes. Bye.
See you next time.